Hello and welcome to Our Time. Homelessness and lack of affordable housing is in the news almost every time we look, and it's obviously a worldwide issue. What can you do and where do you go for help in today's world and in the city and in the country? Our guest is the Chief Executive Officer of the Hutt Street Centre, Chris Burns. Chris, welcome to Our Time.
Thanks, Malcolm. It's a pleasure to be here.
And this is a problem, isn't it?
It is. It's an increasing problem.
We do keep hearing about it, and I just wonder how many people think, oh, well, you know, they've only got themselves to blame because they're on the street, but that's certainly not the case.
No, it's not. All of us are one bad decision or one moment in time away from being homeless. We have seen...
Actually, it's really interesting you say that because that's so true, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, if something terrible happened to your house and it burnt down, where do you go?
Exactly.
If you haven't got family to move to. Recently, we talked to one of the women who's lost her home during bushfires, and she was saying just exactly that. Had she not had a daughter with a house that they could go to, they would have been on the street.
Yeah, and we've got people being evicted from rental accommodation at the moment who can't get another rental, and overnight they're sleeping either on the street or in the back of their car.
So is this a new world problem, or has it always been there, or has it escalated in the last few years?
It's always been there, Malcolm, but it's certainly escalated in the last couple of years. The COVID pandemic has certainly heightened it. With people going into lockdown, we saw a lot more relationship breakdown that caused people to separate and move out of the house. Financial difficulties. In fact, due to COVID, we've seen a start...
Frustration and anger, I suppose.
Absolutely,
That.
And we've seen a big increase in the number of females coming through our centre as a consequence of COVID. It tends to be that we're getting a lot of women coming through who are in their late 30s to late 50s. With children? With children, and relationship breakdown. They were previously part-time casual in the retail and hospitality industries with all the issues around the COVID pandemic. They became homeless, and now we have the cost of living issues and the rental issues, and it's just increasingly difficult.
Do you think we're being frightened a bit because when the interest rate went up, that part of a percent, everyone was saying, oh, it's going to cost this much per year, and it really puts a bad feeling in your brain because when you look at the repayment, it hasn't gone up that much, sort of thing. Petrol has certainly gone up quite a bit, and the cost of fresh fruit and vegetables has gone up quite a bit. But what goes wrong when you can't afford these things anymore? Is it just losing a job? Is it the family breakdowns? Or is it just a myriad of, you could say, bad luck?
Well, the cost of living goes up more than things like job seeker and pensions. There comes a point where you can't afford to pay for your rent and pay for the food and pay for all the necessary items you need to live. And people have to compromise. And unfortunately, sometimes they get evicted and they can't get another rental, and so they're out on the street. It's not because they want to. But it could
also be they're paying off their house and they can't afford to continue the payments.
That's right, and they have to sell the house. There's a multitude of reasons, but the fact is, if the cost of living is exceeding what people are generating in the way of income, that's a necessary recipe for homelessness.
So being in the position you're in with the Hutt Street Centre, does it affect your life when you go home and you think about the people that you've seen during the daytime and the sad things that have happened in their life? How do you feel overseeing it all?
Absolute compassion. You get to know the clients and you know their stories, and you know that this wasn't of their design. You know, they've just been affected by one thing that someone's done to them or they've done. And yes, you do think about it. When you're nice and warm at home, when you go out and you feel how cold it is, you don't help but think about, well, I'd hate to be sleeping out in this weather, in this cold, or when it's been raining lately. Imagine being out there being soaking wet, trying to find a place where you can sleep.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying. So how did you end up being in this position with the Hutt Street Centre?
Well, before this job, and I've been in this role now for 2 years, or 2.5 years, I was South Australian Mental Health Commissioner. And what I got exposed to is the high proportion of mental illness in our homeless population, and how prevalent homelessness is in our society and how it's not just old men who are homeless.
Well, that was, I suppose, the original concept for the Hutt Street Centre, wasn't it?
It is. And if you looked at our old logo, that's what it was, the old man walking away with a bag. And that's one thing we've changed in our logo now. And if you look at it, it's all about the words Hutt Street Centre connected. And the messaging is the only way you address homelessness is if we come together as a whole community, connected to address everything that causes and is homelessness.
And everybody who is.
And everyone who is.
Male or female.
Exactly. And we talk about the opposite of homelessness is homefulness. And just giving a person a roof over their head doesn't give them a home. It only becomes a home when that person who's living in it feels safe. But they are connected with the community around them and they feel they are contributing to that community, and to the point where they don't need any of our services anymore, and they have that sense of homefulness.
Is that partially educating as well, how to perhaps look after yourself better?
Absolutely.
Yep. We've got a few shots of things that happen within the centre.
Yep.
This is what the centre looks like.
Yep.
Where is the centre?
This is at the southern end of Hutt Street. That's our new refurbishment, and we took the main entrance and made it enlarged it so it's a big, open, welcoming entrance that encourages people in, which is what we want to do. Well,
it certainly looks like that, and it's very clear that it's in Hutt Street because it's the Hutt Street Centre.
Exactly.
So this is inside?
So this is inside our dining room. Just up here, yeah. That's inside the dining room. That's a client talking to one of our workers in their wellbeing centre. And we rely very heavily on over 300 volunteers. So the volunteers come in, not only do they serve the food and help around the facility, they also sit down and talk to clients.
Right. So that sort of having something of a semblance of home with like a table and tablecloth, so
Absolutely.
to speak. And this shot here?
That's out in the courtyard barbecue area, and again, that's a case manager working with one of her clients, and they just sit down, they have a cup of coffee, and they work out what's the next thing you need, what's the next thing we need to do together as we walk that journey to homefulness.
Is it also the need to just communicate with somebody who understands, who's not judgmental?
Yeah, absolutely, and who doesn't judge them, and doesn't judge them for why they might be homeless. We don't know. We never know the full story of why they're homeless, but it's being there walking beside them.
I just wonder if people really know the whole story as to why they're homeless.
Yeah,
because sometimes sort of bad luck sort of rolls with you, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it does, and
hard to express why this happened to me.
You pick up one, possibly an addiction to drugs or alcohol that causes other things. A relationship breakdown, you lose your job, and it becomes a snowball.
That's actually a very good point. When you talk about whether it's alcohol or drugs, is there a percentage of people who are affected by that end up in this situation because they just can't break through that addiction?
Well, 60% of our clients, when they come in and we do an intake on them, 60% admit to having some form of alcohol or drug addiction. And
do you think that's because they're trying to bury the bad luck in their life?
Absolutely. They're trying to dumb it down, to anaesthetise themselves from the circumstances they're in. They can get drugs on the street, and if that gives them a chance to have a sleep, then that's what they do. We have a very firm policy against drugs.
That's a very valid point. If that gives them a chance to have a good sleep, that's
absolutely
frightening, isn't it? When you see the cardboard on the footpath and a few rags and things, it's just. Yes.
Well, when you see people on the cardboard and the rags during the day, they're probably asleep because they didn't sleep at night.
That last shot that we looked at quickly there looks to be...
That's one of our visiting health services, and they've probably done some tests on a client. And
so is that goes out and about, does it?
Yeah, we have visiting vans that come and do all sorts of things. So during COVID, we did COVID testing and COVID vaccinations. We have our own nurse in the centre every day who not only cares for injuries, but a lot of our clients have prescriptions, and then we keep the drugs for them and make sure that they get the drugs on.
Right.
So rather than take their prescriptions out on the street.
That makes sense, because they might sell it just so they can...
Or be robbed of it.
Yeah. Yes, that's something I've always... and often thought about, the fact they could be robbed. Now, this looks like a comfortable sort of surrounding.
That's a lovely one. That's our book club. So we have a book club that meets once a week, and they don't necessarily talk about reading a book. They'll talk about a theme. So they might talk about, I think last week they talked about Vietnam, and then it was they ate Vietnamese food. They talked about what's the history of Vietnam, what books are available, what movies, and it's just a chance for them to all come together and talk to each other.
Right, because they wouldn't have had that opportunity before.
No, they don't have a community.
Is some of this just a perpetuation of families where the children have issues at home and they just fall into the same lifestyle?
Yeah, quite often they come out of broken families, family violence, domestic violence, relationship breakdown, and they don't have a family, they don't have a community, they don't have a friendship group. And you can see when they come in, their eyes are empty and they're just scared.
Yes, their eyes are empty. What an interesting expression.
Exactly. So when they come to us, the 4 things we know they want is a warm meal, a hot shower, a change of clothes, and somewhere to charge their phones.
Basic human needs, charging the phone.
Yeah.
I don't know about the other things, but basic human needs. We just have a human need we have to take care of, and we'll be back in a tick. Our guest in this episode is the Chief Executive Officer of the Hutt Street Centre, Chris Burns. Chris, you've had an interesting career leading up to that. We touched on it briefly before, but where did you start? You started in the military?
I did 32 years in the military. I started out as an army apprentice at the age of 16. I was at Balaclava High in South Australia.
Right.
And the recruiting bus came along one day and I thought, well, at 16 I can go and get a trade, wear a uniform and get a good pay. And I ended up doing 32 years in the army. Finished.
Did you enjoy the discipline?
Absolutely, I did.
Is that something missing from some of the clients' lives, that sort of discipline of being able to structure your life?
It is.
From the beginning?
And sometimes that's why they come to us, is that we do provide them with that discipline, and they get in a regimented environment in terms of knowing and understanding rules and being compliant with what our requirements are and what our rules are. But absolutely it is. When you're out on the street, there's no rules. No,
do you think, it's a big question, but do you think in our society that's what we're missing? We're missing a discipline given to us when we're young, because our society has gone, if you feel like it, we'll do it. If you don't feel like it, we won't. We tend to be bringing up our children, asking, 2 and 3-year-old children, do you like that or don't you like that sort of thing, or we won't do it or we will do it.
Yeah.
Are we missing that basic upbringing of our kids that leads into a better structure in life, do you think?
I think there are some families where they don't have that discipline, and there's a basic human need that yearns for guidance and direction in life.
That's really what it is, though, isn't it? Not discipline, it's guidance and direction.
Yeah. And sadly, some children don't get that guidance and direction, so their journey in life is not a pleasant one.
What's sort of the saddest situation that you've encountered?
Oh, inevitably the saddest is when we see a mother turn up with young kids who they've been in this weather, been sleeping in a car for the last 2 weeks. And you know that there's a solution. We can get them into a hotel almost straight away. Mm-hmm. But the very thought that a mother and 3 kids are sleeping in a car in this weather at the moment is just it's incomprehensible. It's just so hard.
Well, it is. It is. So there's a lot of news and current affairs programs talking about the lack of affordable housing, whether it be rentals or purchasing, with the government talking about how brilliant they're going to be trying to fix all that.
Yeah.
Will they be able to?
Well, there's no quick fix to it. But I think the most recent census has just announced that there are 1 million empty houses in Australia at the moment. The houses exist.
Yeah.
If we could get access to the houses, if the maintenance could be done on those houses, and if they could be freed up.
And so are these houses that are owned by government already?
They're either owned by government or rentals or holiday homes.
And they're holding them for Airbnbs or whatever?
Airbnbs or for investment purposes. But for a person in my position, when you see over 100 people coming through your centre every day who don't have a roof over their head, to think out there are thousands of empty houses that are unoccupied that could be used is that's very difficult. As a society, we should be able to work together. It's not just a government issue. This is a societal issue, and and you have to have a community wrap around. And it's no good pushing people off to certain suburbs that are low socio-economic groups. The way you create communities is to salt and pepper people into the community.
I think human nature, generally, we want to help in whatever way we can. Somebody
Absolutely.
who, is less better off than we are. It's not about just giving money, is it?
No, it's not.
It can be about giving your time.
Giving you time, and we have some amazing volunteers, as I mentioned before.
Yeah, I was going to ask you
give
about
so
that.
much. Well, so we have over 300 volunteers.
Yep.
But
How do you become a volunteer?
Simply go on our website and you just register, and there's a process we go through to induct volunteers.
And the website is?
huttstreetcentre.org.au. It's all
And these are some of the volunteers?
That's a great group of volunteers. I think that's our Tuesday shift. But
Tuesday shift.
they all have their own shift, and
And it looks to me there's a variety of ages there as well.
Yeah, we have a great diversity of age. We have our long-term volunteers who you've got there, but we do have a lot of people who come and just do one day. They pay a small amount of money as a donation. That's Pete, our chef, who cooks up amazing meals.
It looks like a pretty good feed to me.
Yeah, that's the standard. They get a 2-course lunch and a very diverse breakfast every day. In the evenings, they go across to Baptist Care and Fred's Vans and what have you. But every day the food is served to our clients. They don't line up to get fed, and it's not served from a Baie Marie, it's all served for them.
Well, that would obviously help their self-esteem.
Absolutely. And they don't go and wash the dishes. The dishes are cleared from the table. So they're treated like they would be if they were at home.
What do they give back?
That's interesting. They greatly respect our facility and what we do. So we don't have very many discipline issues in the centre. Clearly, sometimes people are agitated. They're cold or they're hot. They've had no sleep.
They're coming down from something.
Coming down. We don't have great instances because they self-regulate, and they know that to respect our volunteers, to respect our staff.
Right.
How do they give back to us? By walking that journey to homefulness with us.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that being able to leave the centre and not have to return.
Yeah.
Do many come back once they've sorted their life out and help you with volunteering?
Absolutely they do. Often they don't want it mentioned that they have got that lived experience. Some are quite open and talk about it. And
you really don't know unless you've lived the experience. You really can't understand.
And you'll be surprised the number of people you know already that have had that lived experience of being homeless, and you'd be quite surprised who in our society at some stage in their life has been homeless, probably in their youth or early adulthood. But once you've had that experience, you never want to go back.
No. But is it, having had that experience and having gone through this process, finding employment and finding the next stage in your life, I mean, it's difficult enough when you don't have those issues.
Exactly.
It must be extremely difficult when you do.
Well, when you've had that break from working and from renting, you have no history.
You have no history, exactly.
Exactly. Our presumption is everyone who comes through our front door doesn't have 100 points of personal identification. They've probably lost their driver's licence, they don't have a Medicare card, they don't have birth certificates. So we started that's our start point. How do we get them identification? Because you can't get medical care, you can't get a job, you can't get a house if you don't have identification.
Of course.
You can't set up a bank account. So it's those basic primary needs that we have to
It must be
support.
extremely difficult, though, to sort through the red tape and paperwork to get through there.
Well, most of all, the people who do it spend a lot of time on hold on the phone waiting for government departments to respond. But they just work through the process.
Right, but it makes you think that clearly there must be like a system you can fast track this.
If you want to pay.
Who has to pay?
If you want to fast track administration in government, you have to pay extra fees.
Well, isn't that government's responsibility in this particular instance?
Well,
You'd think.
they would say yes, but if you want to fast track, it's like getting a passport fast, you have to pay fees.
Well, maybe a passport, but, general searches, it can't... I mean, we're all computer-driven these days. How
That's
hard
right.
is it?
Yeah, to get a birth certificate or to get a Medicare card, that is difficult. Getting registered for welfare.
Well, without a Medicare card, you've really got a problem, haven't you?
Exactly right, yeah, and you can't get into the hospital emergency.
So we're looking here at...
That's the nurse doing a hearing check. We offer hearing checks, eye checks. We can get free glasses, free hearing aids, and these are basic needs. If a client hasn't got a pair of glasses and they can't read, they can't look for job ads, they can't look for rentals.
Absolutely. So what happens to people who are old enough to be in the so-called retirement age?
Yeah. So we actually help them too. There's a program after the NDIS where they have My Aged Care. Mm-hmm. We can certainly work out if they're eligible, and most of our clients are eligible. And then we actually do run an aged care program for elderly people who are at risk of homelessness or homeless.
Particularly those who are sick and maybe need more care.
Exactly, and we can provide that care for them. We have
to a nursing home level.
We get them into nursing home, aged care facilities, boarding houses. We're particularly keen and know how to get people into accommodation.
Right.
But if you want a house, that's a bit more difficult.
Right. But you're not the only organisation that are obviously helping.
No.
There are quite a few organisations. Do you ever get a situation where you work together?
Absolutely.
Well, for example, in Melbourne, where this program is also shown.
Absolutely. So
what's the organisation called?
St Mary's House of Welcome in Melbourne. We work very closely with them. We cross-pollinate ideas. We talk about how do we get donations, how do we look after clients better. So we're working very closely with them in Melbourne. We work very closely with Baptist Care and Salvation Army here in Adelaide and in Melbourne.
So it's still very much on the periphery, if you like, of religious organisations?
They're the charitable organisations that tend to look after. But
right.
The thing about Hutt Street Centre is we are absolutely just South Australian. Every donation to Hutt Street Centre stays in South Australia to support vulnerable South Australians, and it's the same in Melbourne with St Mary's House of Welcome. Is donations given there. We're not a multinational.
No, I suppose in the ideal world you'd like to close down, really.
Absolutely, we'd love to see ourselves out of a job. That's our vision, is an end to homelessness, and that's our aspiration. But if we can't end it, at least let's minimise it as much as possible. And that's how do we expedite that journey to homefulness. But a key barrier and a gateway you've got to get on that journey is to get a roof over your head. That's the start of homefulness.
Well, without a home, you haven't got a home.
Exactly.
Without a home, you've got no sort of structure in your life.
Exactly.
It's a funny thing. When we go home at night, what home represents to us can be so much that we just take for granted.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just to have that warmth of a place to sleep where you can cook,
yes.
Where you can
eat, rest, relax, whatever.
Yeah.
We're eating, resting and relaxing right now as we take a short break. We've been talking about the Hutt Street Centre in this episode. Chris, we've got a few more photos just to give people an understanding of what it's like inside, if you like, the organisation. So if you have a problem and you end up going there.
Sure, this is our back courtyard area with barbecue. That's one of our town hall meetings where once a month we get the clients together. They tell us what we could do better, and they're free to tell us what we could do better. But we get to tell them what we're doing for them, what events are coming up, and we get visiting speakers. So we've had politicians come in before elections.
I wonder why.
That's our town hall out in the back courtyard. Before the census, we got the Bureau of Statistics to come in, and they actually did a census, pop-up census booth.
Oh, right.
We did have a pop-up polling booth for both elections. That's our community garden out the front with one of the clients working on it. We also have a group called Gain Greens who go up Hutt Street twice a week, and they tend to all the flower boxes on the street. And inevitably they get a free cup of coffee from the cafes.
Brilliant.
That's our locker room where clients can store their worldly possessions. If you could look inside those lockers, you'd see people's families' histories, their photo albums, their teddy bears from when they were a child. Truly does bring a tear to your eyes. That's our amazing laundry, and hopefully there's another photo shortly of our amazing volunteers, there you go, who help the clients to do their laundry. We don't do their laundry for them because it's a basic skill that we want them to retain.
Of course.
So we just help them to do their laundry every day.
Right, because it's all about preparing them
Exactly.
to leave and get back to life normally.
That's right.
Thanks so much for coming in.
It's a pleasure.
It's really great. I saw an article in the paper and I just thought we can't miss an opportunity to talk about this because we're all part of this solution, really. Any way you can help. It's not just about the money, it might just be about time. In fact, it might just be about saying hello to somebody who's on the street to try and make their day feel better and having a bit of a conversation. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you, Malcolm.
So until next time on Our Time, keep yourself nice till then. Bye.